hello. Welcome to The Play That Changed My Life, brought to you by Harbinger Theatre and OSM Studios, an elaborate ruse to get more theater in my life. We have two very special guests. They're always very special, but today especially. We have two squirrels with us today. Haley Beauregard and Raphael Cohen are in the production of The Squirrels, which I'm directing, going up at Sand Lake Center for the Arts, June 21st through June 30th. Hello, Haley.
Hello.
Great. Excellent so
As
far.
I said to you, this is my first time on a podcast, so we'll see what happens.
Everybody take it easy and welcome Haley. And welcome Raphael.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to have you too. And I've expressed it, but I don't think I've really said how excited I was to have you two come and audition. Have I told you that?
No.
Yeah, because I've seen both of you, and it seems like around the same time, about 10 years ago, I saw you in Dog Sees God, and I actually worked with Raphael on West Side Story, done by CR Kids, at the Egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite a show.
Yeah. And then I saw you do Fagin.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
You saw that?
Albany High School. I used to prowl the halls of Albany High School with Ward. Yeah, and I insinuated myself. I got all the adult roles in Hairspray.
Oh.
Which was too bad for the kids because every kid wants to play Mr. Pinky. But yeah. So no, I've known you guys a long time from seeing you back then, and you were both extremely impressive to me. And
Oh my gosh, thank you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And then I saw you in Hysterical
Yeah, in New York City.
at the Fringe Festival.
Yes, and I remember being super surprised to see you, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Hey,
somebody from upstate came and saw this.
If you post it on Facebook, I'm there. It's just like, the Phantom knows.
Well, now I know, too, you see everything. Like, your list is pretty extensive.
Yeah, I was seeing you just pop up everywhere. When I came back to Albany and I was like, all right, let's get reintroduced into the theater scene here. And I'm just seeing Patrick White here, Patrick White there. I'm just like,
Yeah, like, oh my God, just give me a break.
no, I'm like, I got to work with him.
Well, Gary Hoffman says I have clones, but no. To see you to audition, I was like, awesome. I was like, this is so fantastic, and
I was really excited to audition because I had never worked with you before, but I had heard a lot about Harbinger, and I was excited. And so then when you had sent me the play to read, this was months before the show, like, here, this is what we're doing next. I was like, this play is so amazing.
Yeah.
Not only is it hysterical, but it has so many layers of poignancy and, like, socio-political commentary.
Yeah.
It's such a great show.
Yeah. It works on a lot of different levels, and it's hysterically funny, but it also has social content, and we auditioned back in February.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We auditioned very early. I remember because you made the casting announcement, and a bunch of people who are, in the theater community, they texted me to congratulate, and they're like, oh, congratulations, when's the show? We want to come see it. I'm like, well, it's in late June. They're like, well, what are they casting now for?
So this is your reminder. And Chris and I always say, that we hate to cast early, but, I don't know. I guess there were things coming up in the blood. Once you're running a company, you have this schedule that involves all these other different moving parts, and you go, no, we got to do auditions now, because otherwise we're going to be in the middle of production for our previous show.
What's the downside of casting early? Is it just people get
Their
other schedules come?
People get other work.
Okay.
like if you cast 6 months out, they're going to, shop around, or
Gotcha, okay.
you'll need to cast it again. Mm-hmm. But that almost didn't happen with this show. But so I was very excited with the cast, and we're well through rehearsals. We're entering a very exciting time. It's especially fraught. Yeah, because we're rehearsing in a space that is not the theater, and we are moving into the theater on Monday the 17th, and we have an audience on Thursday the 20th, which is very exciting. So we have to set everything up and light it, get the sound up, get our tails working, and get all that in place in 3 days, which
I have to say it's not the shortest time frame I've done tech on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back in college, we would have to book spaces right from the university, and you could only book them for very short amounts of time. So you would have your show weekend, usually just one, occasionally two, but usually one. And then you'd have maybe 2, 3, if you're lucky, days in the space beforehand.
Oh my God.
And you always needed to clear it out for like whoever was using it during the day. So complete strike every single day.
Right. Yeah. I remember something similar to that in New York City, having to strike your entire set every day. Yeah.
That's so much, especially because I feel like actors, me as an actor specifically, I need to feel like safe in the space. I need to feel like, oh, if I'm doing some sort of action, that I'm not going to hurt myself on the floor here, and like the floor is different than the floor we've been rehearsing
I notice
on.
your eye on that rolling stool. That you're always aware of where the rolling stool is. It's like,
Well, I have to say,
hold.
So we have 2 rolling stools in the show, and they always end up in different places, and it's just...
They roll, Kelly, they roll.
I know. And so having to know where they are at all times, and I've also noticed if I sit on it the wrong way, I just fall. I fall back, so...
No, it is a challenge. But yeah, so going back to college, so I saw you guys back in high school. And how old were you when you did Dog Sees God? What were you doing then?
I was maybe 23, 24.
Yeah, so post-college.
Post-college,
Yeah, you went to Fredonia?
Yep.
And Raphael went to Brown. Yes. So you went to Brown, and you majored in...
So I actually majored in music composition. Well, it started as music composition, and then they merged all of the music concentrations like halfway through, so then it became just music. But what I loved about Brown, and the reason why I really wanted to go there, was because of the open curriculum. So it just gives you a lot of empty space in your schedule to fill with what you want. You're not required to take any math or science courses or anything like that. No requirements whatsoever, only requirements for your chosen major.
I wish I had known of that.
Yeah. So I saw that when I was visiting schools, and I'm like, I need to do this because this would let me just do all the things that I love constantly. And so then it got to my senior year, and this was during COVID. So I'm at home. I'm studying from home, and I'm looking over my concentration requirements. I'm making sure I have all my credits that I need to graduate. What are the last couple classes I need to take? And I was looking at my schedule, and I noticed something, and I noticed that independently, just because I wanted to, I had taken so many theater classes that if I took 2 more, I could add a theater major onto the degree. And I'm like, why not? So I did it and graduated with a double major in theater and music.
Oh my God. That's so cool.
Excellent. And Haley, you went to Fredonia.
Fredonia for acting. So I got a BFA in acting. So it was, I hesitate to say a conservatory-like program, but it was intensive in some ways. It was a 4-year program, audition-based, and it did focus on theater primarily, but there was also some film acting courses as well, which ended up being my focus upon graduating. Less so theater, more film. But theater was always my first love. And I think I sort of got into the rut of graduating and going to the city, finding it wasn't for me, moving back home and telling myself, yeah, I'm not going to go back to theater, or I'm not going to go and do anything if I'm not getting paid. And then I realized I was missing out on doing the thing that I love.
Yeah.
And so it brought me back to the theater. And so for the past year and a half, 2 years, I've started doing a lot more community theater. And it's been really nice to go back to my first love and get back to what I love about acting.
Yeah, which is something I wanted to talk to the two of you about because I find it very interesting, and I struggled with it coming back home and in changing those, adjusting your aspirations. I was in the city for 13 years.
Oh my gosh!
And came home pretty, a mess.
Relatable content.
Yeah, I struggled, and I probably spent 2 or 3 years not doing theater. And I actually thought when I moved back home that it was dead. Like I let the equity go, and it was over. Didn't exist anymore. I didn't realize what was available up here, and I'm still finding new things to do, like a podcast. I'm still finding opportunities that happen all the time. Raphael, you spent time in New York City, yes?
I did. My experience was probably a little different because I moved there during COVID, during the height, right after graduation.
Right.
So
I was there during AIDS. So
yeah. But I had, a couple years earlier, I had interned on the production of Moulin Rouge, the musical. And that was a really, really great time. I met a lot of amazing people. I stayed in touch with them, for the most part. And I was like, great, I'm starting to build this network. So then COVID hit. Everybody went off to do other things. The networks dried up. And I had to pay a New York City rent. So I plugged into a different job with a wonderful little startup company that did game design and running imagination, communication-based games for kids, specifically sort of post-COVID, getting them back together outside, connecting with each other in an imaginative sort of way. So I did that for 2 years, and then it was time to head out. The big sign was when my rent was jacked up by 40% a month before the lease renewal, and I'm like, well, I either need to move somewhere else that I'll probably have to leave in another year, or I can go back to Albany, go back to sort of these old relationships and connections and stuff, and just see what's there now, because I wasn't enjoying city life at that point.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I love the city, going down tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it took me a while too, once I moved up here, to take a trip back.
Yeah.
I had broken.
And I'd love to
I had
visit,
broken up with the city.
Yeah.
And they had scorned me.
Right.
So, but now I thrive on it.
Yeah.
I just eat
As long
it
as
up.
I don't need to pay rent there, I'm happy to go visit.
Yeah, right. So when you moved home, you said you had connections, right?
Well, I had some friends here, which was nice. We just overlapped, and they have since gone on to graduate programs in Massachusetts, but I'll go visit them. But no, I came back, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of sat around. I didn't really have much going on. I was kind of finding the direction in my life, because I had spent 2 years, plugging into more of a corporate scene and being the chief of staff for a startup company. And so then I started looking into business degrees and maybe going to, grad school for public policy or something like that. I was sort of looking into all of these different paths, and none of them really felt right. I would find one and sort of research it and say, this is what I'm going to do. And then a month later, change my mind and be like, actually, I don't want to do that. And then around the start of the new year of 2024, I found the Facebook group, 518 Theater Artists, and I'm like, this is amazing. this is telling me so much information.
What is this group, 518 Theater Artists?
So it's a Facebook group where it seems like the entire theater community of the Capital Region is there. They post about auditions and shows, and you do a lot of posts. That's where I first saw your name and all your clones popping up,
Yes.
right?
My
So
minions.
a lot of posts that just made me feel like, wow, there's actually a community here.
Yeah.
And I connected with a couple of people who I had done shows with in the past, in my time here growing up, like Josh, who we talked about, as well as a few others. And I was like, yeah, I do actually still have a community here. And so I saw the audition notice for the cabaret in Gloversville, and I was like, well, why not? So I sent in and did that show, made some really great friends there. I've since done another show there, and now I'm here.
Yeah, that was crazy. Mike?
Yeah.
We had gone out. He had invited us out to see a production of Antigone in Gloversville. And I was like, Antigone in Gloversville? Okay, let's go see that. But yeah, they did a Valentine's Cabaret, and it was 4 people. It was over an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
Each of you had...
So much singing, so much.
Right, you're a musician as well, right?
There must have been 20 songs, and every one of them was straight up love.
It was
like
Love American style.
Hitting love. It was hitting love so heavy.
And we went through a journey, right? Because the first act, it was the discovery of love, culminating in the connection.
Yeah.
And then in Act 2, things started to fall apart. So we had like Before He Cheats, right, by Carrie Underwood. And we had, the breakup songs, and then the My Heart Will Go On, and I Will Always Love You. And so it brought you through this narrative of love that people have been through. I know I've been through it. And it was honestly very cathartic, I think, for me and for everyone in the audience. People were in tears at the end during those last few heartfelt numbers. It was really quite a special experience, but it was a marathon.
A huge amount of work, and they were all singing their face off. I actually saw that and didn't realize who you were until you auditioned. And then I was like, oh, that's Tony. So, Haley, when you decided to that you needed theater, right?
Yes.
And what was that decision? How did that come about?
I am very, very critical of performance in general, whether that be film or theater. And so for me, I had been in this mindset of like, I only want to do work that's at a certain level. And to me, that like usually was it wasn't community theater in my head. And I think that it took a lot of self-reflection and grief and acceptance, which is, I don't mean to offend anyone by that, but I sort of had to come to an agreement with myself that, listen, performing for you might not look the way you always imagined it to be. And so to go out and put myself out there for new experiences, to experiment with new theater companies that I've never worked with before, and I could be surprised. I could get to a point where, wow, even though I'm not getting paid, I could be doing really good work and working with other people who I am inspired by. And like for you, Raphael, like working with you, I was like, wow, he is so talented. And it's wonderful to do scene work with you because it is fulfilling and it feels like a conversation. Whereas a lot of other community theater I had done in my past as a teenager and early 20s felt more like, people just reciting lines. So it was trying to find a new community where I felt at home and felt like all the right artistic buttons were being pressed and coming to the acceptance that it may not be exactly what I had always imagined. But that has led to me discovering and creating really wonderful friendships with people in the community that have the same goals as me. I actually made a very good friend doing Peter Pan, who was the other Peter. And we both had come from like semi-professional theatrical backgrounds, mine more film, her more theatrical, and wanting to create something of a higher caliber together, and even just meeting her and meeting somebody else who had the same aspirations of creating high quality performance, that re-inspired me and made me feel even more invigorated and re-energized me into, okay, let's do it. Let's make theater. And whether that's with a new theater company that we haven't had an experience with yet, or creating our own theater company, all of it seems like it's a possibility now, having gone out and interacted with all the people that I kind of had been sheltering myself from in this theatrical community.
Yeah.
Sorry, kind of a long-winded.
No. That's beautiful, and it hits so many buttons with me because I moved up here like crying, and and when I went to the theater up here, Albany Civic Theater and Schenectady Civic Players, the first thing I saw was the production of All in the Timing by directed by Bob Gepfert, and I tell him this, and it turned me on, like what is possible within community theaters, and like the 518 theater artists, it's a lot of work putting together a list of what's going on in the capital region and then posting it. And hopefully you haven't neglected, a bunch of people. But you see, like every weekend, there's a dozen productions.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I had
are
no
going
idea there was so much going on up here.
Yeah. And, to your point about building these friendships and, I was thinking about the director's note, and the Squirrels is about winter is coming, the gray squirrels have all the nuts, and the fox squirrels won't survive without them, and a wily outsider exploits the divisions for his own nefarious ends. But I was like, the gray squirrels have all the nuts. So do I have all the nuts, or am I, what nuts do I have to share? Right. And when I look at that in theater, it's like, how can I open myself up? How can I attend? How can I go out and support? How can I build a rehearsal room that is open to everyone? And I look at the Harbinger, and I kind of want to share my nuts and doing new stuff. And we've worked with over 85 actors in 13 productions since our first production in December of 2021. And I kind of feel like the Capital Region is a beautiful place for community theater and for opening yourself up. Like, you'll get a production that is really rough around the edges, or you've seen things that boy, I wish they could have tightened up their scene changes, or or whatever, But if you open yourself up to what's going on and the things being accomplished, you end up looking at casting notices. The cast for Red Maple, which you just got cast in, is just like, oh my gosh, this is a community theater. And you've got David Orr, Kevin Barheit, Tanya Gorlow, Kathleen Carey, and yourself.
And pretty much everyone in the cast. I've met Tanya briefly. I don't really know anybody in the cast. So to me, those names don't mean anything. But to someone who's been doing theater in the area for a long time, probably.
David Orr I've known him for 10 years. I did Glen Ross with him. Kevin Barheit did an outstanding performance in Laramie Project at Albany Civic Theater. I've worked with him on a Tracy Letts play called The Man from Nebraska. Kathleen is one of my oldest friends. She did the second play I did up here, Don Juan in Chicago, where she played my daughter. And I kind of came on to her, I think. But, it was
A little bit of that in the Squirrels, too.
Yes, it's sexy, too. But it's just like, oh, my gosh, to the quality of actors. And there are hundreds of actors. So, in the technical accomplishments, we're going to, struggle. We're putting on the show for $5,000, not 50 or 500,000. But the level of work being done, and to be able to do a play like The Squirrels,
I think that's one of the things that's always drawn me to theater, because people will watch film, and I love film. Don't get me wrong, but people will watch film, and it's really more about the camera shots and the cinematography and the music and the sound design and the visual design. But when you're in a theater, you could have a blank stage, but if you have actors who can fill that space, they can put on a hell of a show.
Yeah. The last show I saw of Peter Brooks had nothing on stage. There was like a carpet, the empty space. Yeah. Yeah. And you can have really for theater, an actor, a script, an audience.
It's all you need.
So I noticed Harbinger uses a lot of different spaces. We're very happy with Sand Lake Center for the Arts out in Averill Park. It's about 25 minutes from downtown Albany. But I noticed this morning that there was another posting for a local group in Clifton Park, Not So Common Players, looking for a space. And I know Homemade Theater has been looking for a space. So it's kind of surprising that there are that many of us, which is sort of why I am also building a theater festival so that we can, get to know each other and how big our community is, and show others, that there are thousands of us involved in community theater every weekend, that maybe we can get a new space out of this, or, raise some funds, or at least raise awareness of everything that's going on.
I think that is the biggest struggle with the area. Like you've compiled that list of all the different theater companies in the area, and there are so many.
80.
And there are people that want to start their own, as I'd mentioned, and there's just not enough spaces to house everybody. And because there's so much competition for those spaces, the price for renting them becomes crazy.
Yeah.
So, if we were to all get together and be able to raise enough money to create or build a new space. And
wouldn't it be great to have like a theater gym, have like a 100-seat house, a 60-seat black box, a rehearsal studio?
Yes, that would be amazing.
And there are 700 abandoned buildings in Albany. In Manhattan, someone mentioned with Not So Common, in Manhattan, there are frequently theaters that are created because the spaces that are being built are mandated to have a public space or a cultural space. So if you want to build this, apartment building, you have to put a theater in the ground floor.
Well, I had an interesting thought while I was in the city. I was walking around, and I was walking past all of these closed movie theaters.
Right.
And I'm like, that business is, especially during COVID, and it hasn't really picked up that much since, but that business, it's floundering a bit.
I was thinking that this morning.
But those spaces are there, and they have, I know it would take a little bit of work, but they could work.
Yeah. Yeah. Spectrum closed, Madison closed, and everyone, there was a great hue and cry about, oh, we're losing that independent theater and the mint brownies. And, it got a new owner, reopened, full schedule, exciting stuff. And Chris and I were there like a week or two ago, and there were 6 people there. You know, so and I think that might just be like DVDs or whatever Blockbuster or whatever form it takes. Movie theaters just might be done.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at the availability of what we can stream, at home, and then the cost of what it takes to go out to a movie these days, I know that me personally, I would rather get a nice meal and sit at home and watch something than go out to a movie theater and pay for that. Unless it's like a huge cinematic experience where I know a lot of other people are going to be going and cheering and stuff like that. But if that's not on the table, then I don't find myself interested.
Yeah, I like to be able to pause to go to the bathroom, especially for these long, epic movies.
Yep.
And you can rent things usually at a more reasonable price from your own home. It's like, for me, I would rather rent from home, but theater is so different. What's amazing about theater, and I like both acting on film and acting on stage, but there is an energy in an audience for stage production that is not there for film, because you are literally feeling palpable energy from the people on stage and from the people in the audience that are reacting. So I don't know, with a film experience, it's so much more internal, whereas like I can physically feel the energy from the actors on stage and the audience of a play, and that to me is what makes it so electrifying. And you are literally watching someone have hopefully a genuine moment right in front of you that you are then interpreting and internalizing and interpreting in your own way and working through similar emotions. And
yeah.
I don't know, for me,
Absolutely.
that's what I'm doing when I'm...
Yeah, and I don't think it's just the energy. I completely agree with you. But also, when you go to see live theater, that is the first time that instance of that thing has ever happened, and it is the only time that it will ever happen, right? You're seeing something that's fleeting, that is going to come to an end, that is unique in its mortality even, right? And that is fundamentally a human experience, right? To have this thing that is not, filmed and then shown over and over and over again, but to have this thing where you go, you see the performance, that was the only time it will ever be done in that specific way. They'll repeat the performance and it'll be similar, but it's never going to be exactly the same. And as an actor, I know, because I make different choices every night, subtly different, but different nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think that's so ironic, because having done film, when you don't rehearse for film, it's literally just like, okay, go. And so it really is the first time you're doing something. And, granted, you might do it like 3 takes or something like that, but it's kind of just like, okay, that's good enough, let's go. With theater, you have rehearsed it over and over and over again, and it's the actor's job to make it seem like it's the first time that they've done it. So it's just interesting, because you're right, and that is the only time it will ever be done exactly that way. But in comparison, it actually has been done before, and it, like I said, becomes the job of the actors to make it feel new and
But
impactful.
that's the magic of it, to learn it so well that you know it like the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
And to have it at your beck and call, so that, no matter what happens, you can still get your lines out. But the memorization and the rehearsing, and that's always the first question at the talkback. How do you learn all those lines?
Is that really the first question?
Oh, no, not at Harbinger's talkbacks. Our audience is very insightful. No, but it is like, it's still, to me, like, you look at someone who's got a one-man show or something, you go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. But yeah, it's to appear that you are coming up with it. I mean, that is the magic, that you have all this dialogue that is just coming out, like, wow. I remember doing The Real Thing, and he's got 4 or 5 long speeches, like a couple pages. And, people afterwards, and it's Tom Stoppard, so it's all brilliant, and I just felt smarter saying that. And people afterwards would go, oh, man, I really want that script now. And I would mail them the script. I would say, here, enjoy. But I would finish the play, and I would feel like it was so invigorating saying these ideas. I want to do it again. I just want to keep talking. But, I don't know if that...
No, I get it. There is definitely a high when you are delivering lines and they feel effortless. They feel, not that you're like trying to remember them, not trying to remember them, making it effortless, but the fact that it feels so genuine and so in the moment and present.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where I can get really critical when I'm watching a show, if it feels like recitation versus like I'm having a conversation with someone, or the person on stage seems like they're not having a conversation, they're just reciting. So I know what you mean, like when you're delivering these monologues and they just feel right. They feel like these are genuine thoughts that I'm having in this moment, even though I've memorized them, but they're coming out of me in a way that feels genuine and natural.
You own it.
And suspension of disbelief is an extremely powerful tool, because that made me think. I was doing a workshop reading, the first ever staged workshop reading that I've done. So we had scripts in hands. It was a full musical. It was a marathon of a musical. But we had scripts in hands, and
Is this the one that killed Patrick White?
Yes, this is the... Yeah, so in this musical, it's based on The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and so my character, who is the man in the picture who's slowly getting worse and worse, and soul is being consumed. I kill my friend Patrick. And my name
name's actually Patrick White.
And so my name was David White in the show, and his name was Patrick O'Danahy. But there was a typo, and the names got mixed up, and so my line when I was confessing later at the police station was "I killed Patrick White," and we just all had a laugh about it.
A typo.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Whatever you say.
But yeah, so the staged reading. We went in, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I mean, it's theater, but we've got the scripts in hands, the audience can see we're like reading. But no, I mean, they were immersed in it. Even with us literally reading from the script.
Yeah.
We made the conversations, natural. We gave the lines, weight that they needed. We gave them the reactionary, ideas, because as you guys know, acting is reacting, that kind of thing. And, the audience, I don't think anyone had a complaint of like, oh, well, you guys holding the scripts took me out of the immersion. I didn't hear that once, and I was amazed.
Yeah.
That's
great.
kind of a testament, though, to the performers, I think, because you could be at a pretty bad staged reading and you're like, okay, all right. But yeah, I have no problem suspending my disbelief. Okay, again, I said I'm critical. But I have no problem suspending disbelief for like what's in your hand, but it really has to do with how you are performing.
You need to give the energy, for sure.
And yeah, searching for a line makes total sense at a staged reading. I'm not going to begrudge anybody that. But I have to say, like, there is a naturalness to, like, probably to your performance that helped immerse the audience.
There's definitely a skill. I mean...
a presence, a stage presence.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's probably very helpful. Like, we know people who don't audition as well as they perform. Not you two. But, it's hard to audition and to pick something up and not have a relationship with it, or maybe you haven't read the whole thing, or maybe, you can't answer the thousands of questions that you need to, but, you're making decisions off the cuff, making strong choices, and there are some people who don't cold read as well, but there's definitely, a part of a staged reading that, you're jumping in right? And giving a performance that, without many rehearsals. Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And I honestly, I relate to, I think we've all probably had moments where you're at an audition and you get a cold read and you're like, wow, that sucked.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that if I had sat with this for a little bit longer that I could have done a lot better, but that's where you kind of just have to like put up your hands and go, well, it was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all got botched auditions. It happens to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Squirrels. It is about winter coming and a nut shortage in the tree.
Well, not so much a shortage.
A nut imbalance. It's about nut inequality. And Haley, who do you play in the Squirrels?
I play Cordata, who is a gray squirrel, a rich gray squirrel, daughter of the patriarch of a very wealthy family, wealthy in nuts.
Wealthy and nuts. Nutful. Great. So you're in the haves.
Yes.
And Raphael, who do you play?
So I play Carolinensis, which, yes, it's a 5-syllable name, but they call him Carol for short. And he is a young, adamant red fox squirrel who really, really sees that, the violence could be coming because he sees the community of red squirrels is starving, and he's trying to resolve things peacefully and get his hands on the nuts to redistribute to the people, or the squirrels, I guess.
Resolve things squeakfully.
Squeakfully, yes.
Briefly, there are a lot of, are they puns or plays on words?
Plays on words, but they're very fun, and they really get. I mean, I can't speak for an audience, but at least when we were reading it, they really got me into the world,
Yes.
into the squirreld of the show.
Yeah, and it is still hitting me, having been through 15 rehearsals, and it still hits my ear and keeps me alive and awake and, in tune with what's going on. So we say the whole squirreled, and their lovemaking is called mucking. Yes, and they squeak to each other, they squawk. There's a roar going on.
Carol, what are you squawking about?
I'm not squeaking to you right now.
And
Don't you
so,
love me?
and the two of you have a relationship.
We do.
We do.
It's a relationship that defies the cultural norms.
Yes.
So a red squirrel like myself is not supposed to be shacking up with a gray squirrel.
It's sort of a Patty Hearst scenario. So the two of you,
Forbidden love.
yes. And what do you see in Carolinensis?
I think I'm inspired by Carolinensis. I think that he's strong. You described him as adamant. He's passionate. I think passionate is a big part of it, about his ideals. And I'm young and impressionable, and not in a bad way necessarily, but more so he talks about his ideas about making the world a better place. And I think I'm a little bit naive enough to think that it's possible just with our own actions and appealing to my family that we can change the squirrel. And I think that's a very, that's a trope. It's of youth that thinks we can do anything. My one voice is enough to change the world, but it takes a whole army of squirrels, of people to change the world. And so our mission, Carol and Cordata's, is to enact great change.
Be the change that you want to see.
In the world.
Yeah.
And I think that that's admirable. And I think that they go about it, at least Cordata does, in a little bit of a naive way.
Yeah. And Carol, what do you see in Cordata?
I think that And I've thought about, well, how did this relationship start, right? Because they're from two completely separate worlds. And I think Carol is smart enough to have kind of been sneaking around a little bit and gathering some information, maybe even trying to find the nuts, the cash, right? But I think that he got very quickly enamored with Cordata because of her idealism, really. I think that, he has started to fall into this more pessimistic view, and he's still passionate, but he's starting to believe that the only real change is going to be able to come through, a violent effort, because nothing will ever change otherwise. But then she comes in, she introduces this new perspective, she brings this idealism that I think I really like, and I really want it to be true. So as much as Cordata is, inspired by Carol, I think Carol's also inspired by what could be construed as naivety, but I think he sees it as just passionate idealism.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to do in this play? Is it the stool?
It's pretty fun.
It's really fun.
That sounds bad to say.
Yeah.
There's a moment of mucking.
Yeah.
There's some mucking, yep.
On the stool?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think it's because that whole scene just around it.
Yeah. And the way it ends
is very fun.
So much fun.
Yeah.
So it gets a little PG-13 maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it's just so funny.
Yes.
It's just really funny, and so it makes it fun to do.
Yeah.
And we actually workshopped that scene quite a bit. I remember
we had to. We're in the other room, and I think someone walked in on us at one point, and I'm like on a stool, and he's behind me, like mounting me, and
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, we're
fine. Yeah. We're just trying to figure out how this is gonna work.
Did you watch us?
Can you tell us if this looks right?
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. So the rest of the cast new to you as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm looking at the poster. I'm like, it was everybody new. I had met Ben before.
Oh yes.
Somewhere briefly.
Amy, who is one of our Squirrel Ensemble. And, this is another thing about being at Sand Lake and knowing that I didn't have a set. I knew I needed, a Squirrel Ensemble, right? And I had an amazing audition. And it's like, given the choice with the Squirrel Ensemble, it was like, oh my gosh, I have Ben Amy, Amber Acosta, Tiffany McWilliams.
They're all very good at being squirrels.
Are all excellent squirrels, and I have them moving trees. So, we're going to integrate them further into the play this week. But there's an excellent squirrel ensemble, and we have Tom Mooney, a young man with Down syndrome who was the lead in Andy and the Orphans, which we produced a year and a half ago. He just an amazing young man, Special Olympian. Ask him to
so
see
many
his
gold medals. Oh
yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, he's got medals like crazy. And Mary Williams, who I have known since my first acting class. When I moved back to the Albany, I was like, I can't teach. I don't want to encourage anyone else. This thing that broke my heart. I can't like push anyone else to pursue this. But Mary used to dance when she was a child. And, she took this class like on Central Avenue or somewhere. And she was in the Delaware Avenue branch of the library. And I had posted a flyer for my acting class. And she was in my first acting class 8 years ago or something. I had 5 students, and Mary was one of them. And she's been with me ever since. And she did an inspector calls with me up at SCP. and Men on Boats, again at Sand Lake. But, whenever I get the chance or the opportunity to work with her, again, it's like trying to share my nuts. It's like the opportunity to build this community. I have these brilliant actors, and I have these people who just love to be on stage, and it's like this great opportunity to to work together.
It has to be hard when you get to like casting a show. The cast of the show is not very large, and you have so many people that you've enjoyed working with in the past, and you probably could have imagined so many people. Like I could imagine Tiffany and Amber playing the role that I'm playing, and having to make those decisions and wanting to give opportunities to all the people that you admire and care about.
12 is a large cast.
Well,
for me, we how many were in Dig? 5 or 6, and I had 30 people audition. Yeah.
But I think of like 6 as being the main, the Squirrel ensemble being separate in a way.
But no, I mean I've wanted to work with Ben Amy, and Tiffany was in Chris's play. Amber was in Dig, but I want to work with Ben Amy, and it's like right now I have this ensemble. Would you please, and there were other people. It's definitely auditions are not fun. For the director, to say, thanks so much. But, and we've worked with, Carrie asked me, I know you've worked with a lot of different people. We've had 85 different actors in 13 plays. And that's not really like any kind of rule or guideline or anything like that. It's just we do wildly different stuff, and some people audition for some shows and don't for others. Whether because of the needs of the show or because they're not interested in that material. But yeah. Dennis has done 3 shows with Harbinger, and Lisa has done 3, I think. But yeah, it is difficult to choose. I know Chris just cast Maggie May, and he had a choice that he was agonizing over and he was going to sleep on, and I have my own feelings. But
Yeah, it's always tough. I remember when I took on some directing in college, and I had a lot more auditions than I thought I would. And it was for A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was a small cast. I was combining the players with the fairies and stuff like that. And so I remember I felt so bad because I had this one friend from some of my classes who I did not end up giving the role to. And he messaged me about it, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. I gotta be objective. I gotta just put in the role. It's not that I think you're a bad actor. I just have to put in the role who I think is gonna.
You're cold.
Be the best in the role.
With Harbinger, this is just something I've always wondered with theater companies. Do you think that with Harbinger, you tend to want to take a chance on new people versus like using actors you might have used before in the past? This is always just something I'm curious about, because I can imagine like, oh, I've never seen this person. I don't know if they might be capable of something I can only imagine.
Well, we've used 85 people.
Yeah,
so yeah, we like new people. We really, and we want to encourage growth. And the only way you get to growth is by reaching out.
Doing it.
And we do things to get people to audition. We flyer, we reach out, we send the script out. Mm-hmm. We do work to get people to come to auditions, because conversely, saying no to people is one thing, but not having people show up at your auditions is the other, because and sometimes you say, oh, I had 30 people show up for Dig, and like for me that's like too many. I want Dig had a cast of 6, as long as the right people show up, I don't need 20, 30 people showing up, for all those rejection notices that I hate sending out,
Well, I have to say this cast is absolutely stellar. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with community theater. This is the first community theater production that I've done. And so it's not that I had, low expectations or any expectations really, but when I started working with all of you guys, especially like when you have that scene at the end when you are just so emotional and you give that powerful monologue after you tackle me onto the ground, I'm always laying there looking up like, whoa, like that.
That's so funny you say that, because yesterday I delivered that monologue to you and you were laughing and I was like, stop smiling. I'm trying to cry here.
Pinch him.
I'm like, you need to take this seriously. I was like, I'm going to hit you.
Yeah. Yeah, grab him by the ears.
Well, it's going to just become my motivation to get him to take me seriously. Like, if you're not going to take me seriously, that's just going to make me go down a different direction.
But yeah, I've been really impressed with just the amount of capability, not capability, but just effort and talent and just overall performance and also the quality of the people. Just as people, they're great human beings. Just really wonderful to spend time with.
I felt the same way too. In the same vein, I think I was pleasantly surprised because I've had some not so great community theater experiences, and you never know. I've been like trying all these new companies to see which one I vibe with the most, and I think this cast, especially, I think it was right at the read through, I was like, oh wow.
Great.
Oh, wow. I think Carrie really stood out to me. Carrie is playing Sierra Day, who is the squirrel that is infiltrating the Dre.
I had no idea he had this in him.
Really?
No. I met him. He was in Mrs. Packard. But at the audition, when he turned it on, I had no idea. I was actually thinking of, he had approached me and told me he was auditioning, and I was like, now how am I going to suggest to Carrie that I need to see, him ramp it up a bit?
Didn't have to say a thing.
Yeah, no.
He's incredible. He's like a force
Yeah.
of energy that cannot be shut off. It is.
Yeah.
I was so impressed by him. And then to also find out that he's like a prolific playwright and is so talented in so many ways.
Scripts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just really an amazing and a kind person.
Very kind.
Very kind.
Always checking in to make sure that you feel safe with all the fight choreography and very conscientious.
I remember at the very start of the rehearsal process, he gave me an apology, just a blanket apology for all of the hissing and screeching that he's going to be doing at me throughout the process, because our two characters are mortal enemies. So,
well, is that fair? A blanket apology. So for the next month and a half, I'll be screeching in your ear. Just don't take any offense. Yeah, I'm really sorry.
It was great though.
He's what I think one of his strengths is reacting in the moment. You're talking about reacting. He is so good at adjusting to any shift in your demeanor, in your delivery, and it is so fun to play off of, because yesterday he literally made a face during this. We were doing an intense fight scene between three of us, and he stuck his tongue out. He was like at me when my dad wasn't looking, and I was like, this son of a bitch. And it was perfect, and it was so great, and that's the kind of thing that is really fun to play off of.
It's very electric.
Yes.
All right, we have to do it. The play that changed my life.
Want me to go first?
Yeah, I need to.
Really?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot, and I was talking to my boyfriend and my mom, and I'm like, what play changed my life? There's been so many plays that I've done that have had an impact, and she's like, well, wouldn't it have been when you started going to summer theater camp and you did Treasure Island? And I was like, well, maybe that was it. I was 11 years old, And I went to Schuylerville Community Summer Theater and we did Treasure Island. And my mom had been pressuring me to go and audition for plays because I would always get jealous when I would see people perform on stage and be like, why can't I be up there? But I was terrified. And they had me sing a song, and I'm pretty sure I sang My Heart Will Go On from Titanic.
Oh my gosh.
Because that was my go-to song as an 11-year-old. And I ended up being cast in a role that had a solo, and it felt so good. And I was stone-faced and just sang out to the audience because I had no idea what I was doing. But I loved it, and I kept coming back. And it was Treasure Island, singing Pieces of Eight and being Jim Hawkins' best friend. That was
awesome.
My role. So yeah, I wish that I had a play that I could say this changed me as a person. That made me fall in love with theater. Was summer theater.
Yeah.
The next closest thing was I was Anne in the Diary of Anne Frank in college, and it was one of the most elaborate productions. We had a 3-story set, and it was a 3-story apartment.
Nice.
And it was one of the most moving plays that I've ever done. And it was the first really lead role that I'd ever played where it felt like the show was relying on my performance in some sort of way. And I think that responsibility and the poignancy of the story really resonated with me.
Good for you.
So
It's nice to have that experience.
I was very lucky to have had that experience because there were a lot of people in my school that never had an opportunity to lead a main stage, and they were just as, if not more talented than me. And it just happened to be, the show that they picked. I fit. I was short enough. And I think was
that's
the
a very
big thing.
specific requirement.
Yeah.
So
If you're doing a college production of Anne Frank.
Right. So, I was lucky that I had that opportunity before graduating because I think that it also instilled a lot of confidence in me to feel like I can do this. I know that I can take on a role like this and feel successful and feel good about my performance.
I'm so glad. That's awesome. Raphael?
Oh boy. I would point to one in particular, and for a very specific reason. So when I was younger, I've been performing for a very long time. It started with piano recitals. I've been playing piano since I was 3 years old. So I would do these piano recitals, and of course, nerve-wracking, but you get through it, whatever it is, it will be. And I learned, at a pretty young age that when doing live performance, you do your best, you cover your mistakes as best you can, and you keep going, right? And that's a mentality that I got myself into. I used to do busking, right? I used to bring my keyboard out as a little 9-10-year-old, busk on the streets of Saratoga.
You are brave.
Yeah, it was great because I had, I remember this. We were taking just a little camping trip up to Maine to this little tourist town, York. And, my dad was like, why don't you set up your keyboard? I was 9 years old. Why don't you set up your keyboard, play a few songs, see what happens? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I decided to do it. And, this little 9-year-old kid, singing these pop songs and playing, right? I made like $120 that night.
Nice.
More money than 9-year-old me had ever seen. And I'm like, Dad, I'm going to do this constantly.
How many Lego sets can I buy?
So many.
Did your dad take like 10% and say?
So we had a deal. He took all the change. He got the loose change for tolls, and
he took 10%
and the campground showers. Yeah,
he's your manager.
Yep. But so then I had this problem when I was busking or doing recitals or anything, is that I had this deathly fear of cameras. As soon as someone pulled out their phone and started filming, I would immediately get in my head and be like, oh my God, this is now going to last forever. And if I make a mistake, that's going to be on camera forever. And oh my God, what am I going to do? And of course, I would end up screwing up. So my dad used to always joke that he could never get any videos of me because anytime anyone started filming, I would immediately start messing up. And so this just continued, and I had to sort of deal with it. And then I was doing the production Huckleberry Finn. This was one of my first like shows. How old was I? I couldn't have been that old. I was like maybe 11 or 12, 13 maybe. I was doing it with the Youth Actors Guild, YAG.
Yeah.
So I was doing it with them in Troy, and we were doing Huckleberry Finn. I was playing Tom Sawyer, and we've got this theater of maybe 100, 150 people there. And so we start on the scene, I'm on the boat, I'm saying my lines and stuff. I look out at the back and I see that there's this big camera set up and the lights blinking, and I'm like, I didn't know this was going to be filmed. And immediately I get in my head about it, and I trip over my line that I'm saying in that moment. I think I repeated it like four times. I kind of stuttered on it, and time slowed down for me. I was just like panicking on the inside, and I'm like, I have a whole show to get through. The camera's not going to stop filming. I just need to deal with it. And I powered through. I messed up the line. I think I said, I think I was supposed to say, "We ain't after no treasure," and I was just like, "We ain't no treasure," and that's kind of, and then that was the whole thing. And then from there on, I've never had a problem being in front of a camera.
You worked through it.
It was like I just shattered that
exposure therapy.
Yeah. I just shattered the fear right then and there.
Trial by Finn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think Huckleberry Finn is the first YAG production I saw. Just last summer at the Shaker.
Oh, are they doing it again? They did it
Shaker.
again?
Yeah, which was a beautiful barn they had.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That was fantastic. My mom, I think if you watch the Sidney Davis production, my first play was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And my mom encouraged me. It was a summer camp for kids,
And they did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes. There was like a 15-year-old martini with a pasted-on mustache, and I was Ruckley, the vegetable.
Okay.
Yeah, but like during rehearsal, we would improv, like, how did he get his lobotomy, or what is he, and I came up with this backstory of killing my wife, and, I was 16. It's like, and I thought, wow, this is good stuff.
This is real work here.
Yeah. But my mom encouraged me, and she found I spent my senior year in high school at the Egg with New York State Theater Institute getting work study credits. So I never went to my senior year of high school. I spent it at the
Good
Egg.
for you.
Yeah,
Fun year.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Yeah, and consequently, I don't have much relationship with my high school. But
That's not a bad thing.
But I used to take the bus, down to Albany, instead of going to the school, and I spent my whole senior year with, and there were a lot of college interns at the time who were doing it. So it was, it was an introduction to the working world and to professional theater, and and you got to do. I was in the press office for one show. I was on stage for a show. I actually did Diary of Anne Frank. We took it on tour. We took it to Syracuse and Cold Spring Harbor.
Really cool.
Yeah. I was 17, and I was one of the Nazis. So we had a crash box at the end, and we would kick the door in and shout "Aufmachen, da drinnen, schnell, schnell." But and during the show, we would be in the dressing room playing Risk.
Oh goodness!
Yeah.
Starting as Germany.
Yes. Getting into character.
Oh goodness.
My mother pushed me into that. Thank God.
My mom was the same way. I think she regrets it a little bit now, because now it's like I'm not happy doing anything else other than theater.
Yeah.
Like nothing else compares.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it helped me gain a lot of confidence.
Oh yeah.
My mom passed away a couple years ago, but no, she was 90.
Oh, wow. So she lived a good long life.
Yeah. And I would visit her, and she'd ask me what I was up to, and I would tell her, I'm creating a theater company, or, and she'll, good, keeps you out of mischief. I was like, yeah.
Gets me into other mischief.
Yeah, right. But no, I mean, when you can't do anything else, it's like, I'm so grateful that we have so many opportunities and so many great people to collaborate with and who support us. And, it's just a great thing to get involved with.
Oh, yeah. And, it really can help you find a path, even if that path isn't acting.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different facets. And, if you do theater in high school and you're like, wow, I really like standing up and talking to people, maybe you be a public speaker, of some kind, right?
I had this student this past season in my acting class who is a chemist. And why do you want to get involved? And she wants to build confidence. And, okay. And by the end of the term, I give them a number of scenes to choose from. I assign a scene partner and say, okay, here are 8 scenes, you pick. And she picked this scene from At the Wedding. Hilarious. This lesbian comes to smash up her ex-girlfriend's wedding, and it's a hilarious scene. And this character is just malcontent, there to cause trouble, and she's playing it, and she dances on to YMCA, and then she has this whole confrontational ex-lover fight, and I was like, man, that's some powerful stuff.
Came a long way, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It really does build those skills. And even for people who don't, go on to pursue it, it's a great thing to do for yourself.
Yep. Well, that's a good place to land. So this is Patrick White, the play that changed my life. Brought to you by Harbinger Theatre and OSM Studios. And today we've been talking to Raphael, Cohen, and Haley Beauregard, who are starring in The Squirrels by Robert Askins. It goes up June 21st through June 30th at Sand Lake Center for the Arts, 2880 Route 43 out in Averill Park. We have a free preview on June 20th. We have talkbacks June 21st and June 28th. And there is a nut tasting reception on June 22nd where we'll have all sorts of nuts and nut treats and nut recipes. So I hope to see you in a theater soon. Thank you so much for joining us.